Good evening, malcontents. How are you? It is Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. It is day 130 for protests in Seattle. And my understanding is there was a protest that was planned for this evening, but we are in studio. I can only do so much. And yesterday got one hell of a workout. We used to do a lot of in-studio work, and we're moving to do more in-studio work, and we're here in Studio 2. And I think we've been working out the kinks, a couple of things. Sound out of sync? Sound should be in sync now. My mouth should be moving with the sound. Hopefully I think we've got all of the vid clips figured out. iPad's got a full battery. Everything's connected up. I'm not muted. I can actually look down here on this and see your comments going, hello, California, how are you? Shout out from where you are. I love seeing the shout outs with people, especially when you're not in Washington. I love seeing it. I love when I see, especially when there's people from outside of the country. So what we're going to do tonight is we got 5 pieces that we're going to be covering tonight, technically 6. We have the protest from last night on 10/5, and at the end, bonus material, malcontentment's view, not poll cam view. Poll cam, you see something totally different. I don't see what you see, but if I'm using the poll cam or if I'm using the camera that's up on my helmet, then you get a better idea of what I am actually seeing. And let's talk about the protest on 10/5. There was an ENDD march yesterday. Seattle police on the scanner chat estimated 60 people. I said on my feed from 50 to 75. It looked like it grew, and then I was like, well, maybe 75 to 100. So I'm getting better at estimating crowd size. 60, 75, I think you're kind of splitting hairs at that point. It was a totally peaceful march. And we filmed 2 hours and 10 minutes of this. There was almost no direct action to speak of. There was what we call in the protest community, or what they call in the protest community, good trouble. Good trouble is just really minor things like, hey, we're going to move this traffic barricade into the road to slow the police down. And I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the clips, and then we're going to go ahead and unpack them. And so that's the lead story. And with that, we're going to roll that first clip. SPD bike officers, group of SPD bike officers, large group of SPD bike officers. So let me tell you what was going on there. 2 things. The marchers, the protesters, it was all of a sudden, camera wasn't running, didn't have my helmet on yet, that we were having a conversation with a couple other streamers and with a couple of the protesters, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, they're rolling. I mean, they're moving right now. So by the time I got everything turned on, and then I discovered, Streamlabs, that my titles, overlays, were gone for Streamlabs. So in panic, I'm rebuilding my my overlays, and then autocorrect decides like, oh no, you don't want malcontentment, you just want malcontent. And so it says malcontent tango on there all night. What are you going to do? It happens. This is the beauty of live production. By the time I kind of got titles panicked on there, got the camera rolling, everybody was about 3 blocks ahead of me. And I was zigzagging through the blocks, and it was interesting because I got to see this perspective from SPD's side, and SPD was zigzagging through the blocks trying to figure out where the protesters were also. And then as we roll into the second clip, I'm starting to get closer and I can hear them, and I'm continuing to be either in the shadow of SPD or directly in front of SPD or directly alongside of SPD as I'm trying to catch up with the protesters. Move back, move back, move all right, so well, bicycle officers are setting up. Police are announcing to move away from the officers. And the protesters are chanting, "Move back."
Move back is a common chant from, there is a couple of officers here with riot helmets and batons. I'm going to have to keep my eyes on these because I can see one guy who seems to be looking at me pretty intently. The one that you saw in that frame that was closest to the building is basically looking right at me and not taking his eyes off of me. So if they push, I have a feeling he's going to run right at me. So I'm going to keep my eye on him while holding the camera on the bicycle line.
You don't know that. Actually, I've after 4 months of filming out there, you start to kind of pick up and go, yeah, this guy's giving off creepy vibes or bad vibes. The other thing that I've kind of observed, officers say if they've got their batons out and the batons are just kind of, you can't see them out, but they're just kind of resting on the ground, they're generally more chill. Officers that are holding their batons like this, they're looking to roll. And that's what I've seen. They're looking to go. Another thing that I've learned, and I really try not to do this pose, and sometimes I do it to my own detriment, that is avoid doing the pose. You ever see an officer and they've got their thumbs in their body armor and they're kind of like this? It's not a power pose. Their shoulders are tired. And I actually caught myself very early on when I was wearing body armor where I was doing that. And I'm like, I don't want to be in the officer pose. I don't want to trigger anybody when they see this, somebody like that and they got their things up like that. But I'm actually pretty convinced they're just doing it because their shoulders are feckin' tired. If you've watched other streams, if you're a long-term malcontent, there have been times when I've been like, yeah, this guy, I can see it. He's eyeballing, and every single time go. And the person that was the officer that was all the way to the left, well, that left. Everything's reversed on camera. That left. That was the one that was just like that. And so that was down in South Lake Union, kind of right on the edge of all of the Amazon campus there. And of course, you're probably wondering, well, what happened next? And we'll go to that now.
What you're not seeing in this feed, like you're seeing this bike line, what you're not seeing that I saw as I was walking up, there is a lot more police officers than just what's on this bicycle line. There is a lot more officers. And I can't sit here and say, oh, I know exactly where they are. But if you were at the start of the stream where I was trying to catch up with the protesters and I was basically walking parallel with the bike cops, this is interesting. If you can kind of see, SPD is moving back very slowly. And they do look like they are moving back. If you see the blinking red lights, that is their body cams. So the police body cams are on if you see the blinking red lights.
2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
They should take 11 steps back and on the last one, yeah, fuck 12.
Yeah.
That would be.
Yeah. So they've turned around and they're walking, and we'll see what the bike cops are going to do. If they're going to continue to follow, or are they going to go around the block? They're holding the line.
And so actually they held back for quite a while and then they started to follow. It did actually look like they're going to go around the block. That is kind of, that's it. That's the excitement for the night. There's some more. We have more. And again, I have other shots that we'll show later on tonight, which is the view that I have versus what you were seeing on poll cam there. The other part that I called out, right, that the body cams are on, you see the blinking red light. Right before SPD came around that corner, I was and another streamer, we were right up with those bikes because the way the traffic was, the way the traffic lights were working, and then we were on the other side of the street. SPD moved in force around, and so we ended up falling behind the protesters. And one of the commanders said, all right, body cams on. And that was before they even went around that turn. And when body cams go on, that is at least they're anticipating or expecting that there is going to be an interaction, that there's going to be some action. And so that was why there was a little bit of air of tension that was in there, because body cams are on. Protesters, initially moved forward on the line, and there was the announcements to stop doing it, and then the protesters took a few steps back, and then they turned around and walked off. And then they continued through the night. We're not done. We're going to go ahead with a little bit more. And with that, as I said, I know there's people they just watch and they want what I call protest porn. What I mean by protest porn is they want violence. They want to see tear gas and pepper sprays and batons and people running and yelling and screaming and water bottles and rocks and fireworks. That's what they want to see. And that's the only reason they watch. That's one of the mods and I, we love doing the studio stuff because we don't get a lot of chuds in the comments.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Yeah, I have a lot more chud clips. Been working on chud clips. You guys will be seeing a lot more different chud clips tonight. And we don't get a lot of chuds in the comments. We still do, but it's not anything like when there's protest porn. And there were people commenting like, this is boring. It's like, this is what 97% of it is. 90% of this stuff is peaceful protest. And then there was a comment last night that somebody made. It was like, I watch your streams and there's just violence. I'm like, you just watched a 2-hour stream and nothing happened. And like what, the 9:25 press conference I covered, there was something there. Black Joy, something happened there. The 8-9 event over at Green Lake. Am I missing something? Are there things that I'm not seeing? Because a ton of what we cover is definitely not only just not erupted protest, but not protest at all. And I'm not talking about the in-studio work. Anyway, there was this tweet on Twitter this morning that I was tagged in. This is from Esther Scan for BLM, and they wrote, the highlight of the night was Malcontentment T, that's the Twitter handle, describing a couch in detail. Now, you're probably, if you didn't watch the stream last night, you're like, what the heck is that about? Let's roll the clip.
This is where Seattle just makes me go, what the heck? So here is a random couch that looks like it's circa like 1994 or something, with the light kind of the light maple pine look and this dark forest green. This was a really bitchin' love seat once upon a time. And part of just like, it's like, where the hell did this even come from? Where did they find it?
So here is this vintage 19, I can't believe something from 1990s is vintage, right? Like some 25-year-old couch is in the middle of the street again, trying to catch up with the protesters. They were moving really, really fast last night. On that comment on moving really fast, we're just going to go ahead to the last clip on the recap of the protest last night.
Oh, maybe a block and a half up. No, what was it?
He said malcontents Antifa, fuck you!
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
These are chud.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
A cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller. A chud, all right?
Chud.
Yeah, so apparently some brave keyboard warrior felt brave enough to yell out their window that the malcontent is Antifa and fuck you. What we figured out, because we know when the chud starts showing up.
These are chud.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
And we get more of those during the live streams. And when they start flowing in, we can kind of tell by the audience at this point on who's scraping our feed. And it was Kitty. And I even called it. It was Kitty because we know how your followers operate. Kitty, thank you for amplifying our voice and stealing our content. And thank you for giving us the eyeballs. It's really appreciated because you just help amplify our. Are you stealing our content tonight, Kitty? Probably not, because your audience are chuds.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
And they don't really appreciate thoughtful content. They just want protest porn. By the way, Kitty, a lot of your followers that were clogging up our stream were upset because there was no protest porn. This just goes with the territory, I guess. So that is the summary. Now, again, at the end, we have a video that it compiles video that you didn't see. This hasn't aired. It's going to premiere tonight, and that will be in the last segment that we do on this. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move to Wolf City, Texas, and Jonathan Price. That story has moved at light speed. If you are not familiar with Jonathan Price, where have you been? Let's recap. Jonathan Price on Saturday night, city employee, pillar of the community, motivational speaker in a town of 1,400. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. No criminal record. No, like nothing. Domestic violence incident is going on at an Exxon gas station. And he stops to defend the woman. Man and woman going at it. Him and the man start going at it. Police show up, and then police go and taser Jonathan Price. Why? Because he's frickin' black. Let's just call it for what it is. And then he according to the police, resisted arrest in a non-violent way. Like, what the hell does that even mean? And so they shot him. They shot him dead. And with that, we're going to go ahead and roll these clips.
Texas Rangers are looking into an officer-involved shooting. The family of Jonathan Price says he was shot and killed on Saturday night while he was trying to break up a fight. Residents say Price, a city employee and a mentor, was loved by so many. We now want to go live to Alex Rozier, who is there in Wolf City with more on this story. Alex.
Emory, police have released very limited details at this point. What we know for sure is 31-year-old Jonathan Price was shot and killed in this gas station parking lot in Wolf City late Saturday night. And now a memorial has started following his sudden death.
A vigil in Texas now, and a police officer on administrative leave. A story too familiar in America. The Texas Rangers investigating why an officer shot and killed 31-year-old Jonathan Price.
Yeah, Shep, good evening. We know that investigators staying very tight-lipped on the circumstances surrounding this tragedy. Texas Rangers have just recently taken over the investigation. But what we're learning tonight here, Shep, in Wolf City is that Jonathan Price was absolutely not a stranger in this community. And proof of that, right behind me, several hundred people turning out here on one of the main thoroughfares in town, gathering to pay tribute to Jonathan and his family, who have been in this community for 3 generations.
I've watched that clip probably 10 times today. That segment, there was actually a typo in one of the courtesy call outs, and so I had to actually watch it again. And it's really, really hard for me to watch. It's really, really hard for me to watch that father, because the pain is palpable. And Jonathan Price got the death sentence for assuming a non-threatening posture and trying to walk away. You heard it. The former officer, they are no longer an officer once they are arrested. The former officer is being held on $1 million bail. Now, I want to contrast this story because there's another aspect to this. And I really want to call out Washington State and Seattle and King County. And I'm going to talk to, I'm probably going to preach to the choir, but I am going to talk to, I am preaching to the choir. Seattle and King County loves to think how woke it is, how inclusive it is, how we make everybody want to feel good. And we do all of this passive-aggressive theater antics in the interest of making ourselves feel better. Oh, we're so wonderful. We're so I gave a homeless person $2 yesterday, or I talked to the black person in front of me in the line at the grocery store. Aren't we inclusive? I went to Chop one day. It was really neat. There was a lot of music and barbecue. Seattle and King County is racist. It's racist to the friggin' core. You don't believe me? Let's contrast this story. And let's go back to Jesse Saray and former officer Jeff Nelson. First of all, it took almost a year for Jesse Saray, even with I-940 passed in this state, to get the first inkling of justice. And second-degree murder charges, among other charges, filed against former officer Jeff Nelson of Auburn, Washington, who, by the way, shot 3 people in cold blood and ran over another person with or rammed somebody with their police cruiser, but hit somebody so hard with their police cruiser, injured them significantly, and 65 use of force incidents over a career that was only 11 years long in a town of 82,000 people. That's Jeff Nelson. And Auburn just kept making excuses for him. Jeff Nelson walked into Kent. I actually got to watch him walk into that courthouse at 7:35 in the morning. And he walked into that courthouse and was able to get in early so that there wouldn't be the whole big media thing as he was going in. And he walked in on a summons on second-degree murder. And the judge was flabbergasted. I will give the judge that. And then King County prosecutors, who are trying to paint themselves as enlightened, as doing the right thing, don't ask for bail. Because, well, he's not a flight risk. And he's a police officer. He's a police officer that murdered a man. And Elaine Simmons, Jesse Saray's foster mom, made an impassioned plea to put bail of $1.5 million to $2 million on former officer Jeff Nelson, because that was the typical bail for that type of murder charge in King County. And she cited a case in her impassioned plea. And the judge agreed there should be bail, and it was set at $500,000. And Jeff Nelson, are you watching tonight as we talk about you? Nah, because, dude, you're totally a chud. You're just totally a friggin' chud. Now, are there some differences? Yes, Jesse Saray was having a mental health and or drug and alcohol crisis at the time. However, Jesse Saray was in a state where he wasn't agitating anybody, and Jeff Nelson escalated the situation. And from Jeff Nelson arriving in his second interaction with Jesse Saray to Jesse Saray dead in the ground because Jeff Nelson pumped 2 bullets into him and tried to pump a third in the span of 4 seconds. He fired a shot into his chest. That's the shot that killed him. He went to fire a second shot. The gun jammed. He cleared the jam and then did a headshot when Jesse Saray was already dead and on the ground, per the coroner's report. And King County prosecutors stood up and said, he doesn't need bail. And Texas is supposed to be this backwards, back-ass state. Governor Abbott is a troglodyte. Their lieutenant governor, like, on a bad, when the lieutenant governor's having a bad day, he almost makes Trump look sane. Almost. I get it. But the Texas Rangers slapped a murder charge on this officer down in Wolf City, Texas in 2 days. He's sitting in a jail cell. He didn't get a summons. They didn't paint this like, well, he's an officer. He's not a threat to the community. Clean up your act. This is why we protest. This is why there are protests for 130 nights now going on in Seattle, because it's not that it just started happening or all of a sudden got worse. It's because everybody's got one of these. Everybody's got one of these. And all of these got a 4K camera in them and an array microphone, and we're just seeing it now. And we're seeing it. That's what's going on. And with that, we're going to move to our first commercial.
I don't
has a power greater than words can really express. Songbird, sing a song to me. Let me know where I'm supposed to be. It's such a shame, yeah. Well, I was your TV girl. The EP is called Blue, and my website is classicelishamusic.com.
Absolutely tremendous musical artist, a tremendous woman. I'm honored to have spent time with her and listened to her music, and also work side by side when she's been streaming. She does a little bit of streaming. And it is a fantastic album. It is available on her website, which we just highlighted. It is also available on Bandcamp, but it's also available on iTunes. The download is $13. There is a CD with a bonus track available. That's on her website, and that's available for $15. It is one of the easiest ways that you can support a BIPOC individual. If you like that style of music, it is so worth investing $13 in that EP, and you can enjoy that music forever, while at the same time putting some money in the pocket of a fantastic BIPOC artist. And if you are, or you know of, an individual that has a black business, is a black artist or indigenous or a person of color, and you want to spot, because we're not charging for these spots, we're not making money off of this. So if you want a spot, hit us up. In the case of that one, we made that spot for her. Did it quick, freely admit it, but we made that spot for her. And we can make you a spot too. And we can go ahead and put you on the Malcontentment Happy Hour. With that, we're now going to go down to Burien, Washington. And we're going to go to another tragic story involving the very woke King County, he says very sarcastically, and the story of Tommy Lay. Tommy Lay was 20 years old. He was the day before his high school graduation. And somebody called 911 to say, hey, there's a scary brown person that is acting all crazy and stuff, and they might be armed. Yes, because that's what we do. And this was in 2017. And King County Police showed up, and you already know where the story's going. Tommy Lay was shot dead. And King County said he had a knife, and they charged him with a knife, and they had no other choice. And with that, let's roll the story.
For 3 years, Tommy Lee's family has wondered what really happened the night he was fatally shot by a King County Sheriff's deputy in Burien.
It just keeps changing, and I don't know what the real story really is.
The Sheriff's Office Use of Force Review Board determined the shooting was justified. Neighbors called 911 saying a man was acting bizarre and threatening people with a knife or some sort of sharp object. 3 deputies responded. 2 of them say Lee's fists were clenched with something in his hand, and they both fired their tasers when he didn't stop. The deputy who opened fire says Lee kept moving towards him. He feared for his life and had no other choice but to use deadly force. The sheriff's office later revealed Lee didn't have a knife. He was holding this ballpoint pen.
This was just not a thorough investigation.
Now, a report commissioned by the Office of Law Enforcement Oversight found serious gaps in the investigation by the Sheriff's Office. This independent civilian report says both deputies weren't interviewed by detectives until 5 weeks after the shooting. The interviewers essentially asked the deputies to tell their story, and there were almost no follow-up questions in the process. Although detectives knew the autopsy showed Lee was shot twice in the back and not in the front, the independent report says the detectives asked no questions about that. One of the deputies demonstrated that Lee was moving away from, not towards either deputy when he was shot at this intersection. But that part of the interview wasn't transcribed, summarized, or documented for the review board. This independent report criticizes the sheriff's office for not spending much time on that key piece of evidence, instead focusing on other things.
So one example is that they went to tremendous extent to suggest or prove that Tommy did have a knife, even though there was no evidence he had taken a knife from his home. They went to his home, they collected knives, they showed them to witnesses, they tried to get an identification.
Lee's family has accused the sheriff's office of a cover-up and has filed a $10 million civil rights lawsuit against the county and deputy.
I'm coming at you. Oh, wait, I'm white. Now, here's the really horrible part. I-940 didn't exist in 2017. So even if all of this had come out, it would have been basically impossible to convict the King County sheriff deputies involved in this incident, because the old standard before I-940 was passed in Washington was you had to prove malfeasance. You had to prove that there was malice in the heart, which is unprovable if you really think about it, right? Because this is a concept. This is an emotion. So how do you prove malice? You can't prove malice. Certainly not in the moment like that. Very clearly, by the mountain of evidence that was here, there is a huge cover-up that has gone on. There was no interest in solving this crime. And this moves into the next part that I want to talk about, is the myth of the model minority. This is really strong in the Puget Sound area in particular, and this is part because of the tech industry that we have here. And the tech industry has drawn in a lot of person of colors, particularly people of Asian descent. And one of the things I learned in researching this piece was when you say Asian, Asian represents something like 30 different countries and regions. It's, I think a lot of people hear Asian and they think kind of Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Asian. And no, there is a long list of people. And there is this thinking that Asians have the highest level of education. 50% of Asians in the United States have a college degree compared to 29% of the general population. They generally do better on equivalency tests. They are the race that has the highest level, even over whites. They have some of the highest college admissions, again, as a percentage within their race. And we know in the tech industry, they tend to gravitate towards engineering and technology roles. They're very big into STEM because culturally they are under this massive amount of pressure to perform. But they're also under a lot of pressure because their skin still isn't white at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, there is the outside pressure, this expectation of, oh, it's the tiger mom, and the tiger mom's going to push, and they're good at math, and all of these stereotypes. And the belief is, well, Asian people aren't poor. Asian people, but when you start breaking things down and you start breaking it, say, by the different countries, the ethnicities within this huge group of people that you could call Asian, there are actually subgroups in there that have high school graduation rates that are below the indigenous, which have, again, if you look them at as a total group, indigenous has the lowest high school graduation rates in the country, right behind Hispanic. But if you break up Asians into their particular countries that they come from, or particular cultures they identify with, there are some groups that are much lower than that. There is poverty in the Asian community. There is racism directed at the Asian community. And I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying this. Everyone is racist. Everyone has an inherent bias. If that statement just made you uncomfortable, it made you uncomfortable because you are not ready to admit and grasp your unconscious bias. You're not willing to admit the racism and the inherent bias that you have. Everybody has it. Everyone. And the minute you look in the mirror and you go, you know what? I'm racist. Then you can start doing the real work. And I'm telling you, it is just like when you do it. It isn't because it's like, well, I can do it and I don't have to do anything about it. You're all of a sudden going to start catching yourself on things. And it's not a thing about being, well, I'm going to be woke and inclusive. That's a whole totally different, because it's like this facade that we have here. Every person in King County should be completely outraged at the story of Tommy Lee. Every aspect of this story. The story that the sheriff deputies told, by all of the evidence that's there, all of it, the autopsy evidence, there is no knife. Well, here's what's not included in the story. They went in with a search warrant to his parents' house, their grieving parents' house, and took all of their kitchen knives. Like the sharp knives, not the butter knives. And then they were trying, as the story said, trying to get witnesses, in some cases trying to cajole witnesses, like, come on, it was dark and stuff. Wasn't it this knife? And they already knew it was a friggin' pen. They already knew it was a pen. The system isn't broken. The system works perfectly. It works exactly as designed. And that is why the system has to be completely rebuilt. Because this shouldn't happen. And again, why are we finding this out? Look, I know people don't, especially, within the protest circles, mainstream media. And yeah, I get it. A lot of them are chuds, and a lot of them, if you go and look like on King 5, they have not let go of this Tommy Lay story. They are just on this Tommy Lay story. And they have a piece right now that is up. Wasn't going to share it in the show, but I'm going to do it as a teaser. And it is a much more in-depth interview with the family and what is going with the lawsuit, and talking about the fallacy and the myth of the model minority. It is a tough piece to watch because it is very, very emotional. So if you go up to King 5 and you do watch it, bring a tissue. And with that, we're going to go to the second match.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black Coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
All right. I'm actually excited to share an announcement from Black Coffee that was on their Facebook page. It went up apparently on their Facebook page like right before we went live. And thanks to my editors and mods and admins. By the way, this is a good opportunity. If you love your mods, you love your admins, you love the editors to help me with this stuff, go ahead and spam those hearts, because that's what they're paid. Because we sure ain't getting rich doing this. We sure ain't making money doing this. We're doing it out of passion and out of support the Black, Indigenous, and person of color community. So spam those hearts. Let those mods, editors, and admins know that you love the work that they are doing behind the curtain. Black Coffee is going to have a soft opening. So what a soft opening means, if you're not familiar with that, it's not like it's the grand opening. It's we're going to open up the doors, we're going to have some customers, and we're going to work the kinks out. So I would say bring a little patience. Anytime you go to a soft opening, you should bring a little patience. They're having their soft opening this Saturday. Black Coffee is located in Shoreline. And again, this is a really easy way that you can support the Black community. Go to the drive-thru and get some Black Coffee Pacific Northwest, or Black Coffee Northwest. I know they don't have the Pacific on there, but some Black Coffee Northwest, ground in excellence. And that's something that you can do. I don't want to go all the way to Shoreline. You got to do a Costco run? Big-ass Costco in Shoreline, just up the road from there. So you can go get some Black Coffee and go do your Costco run. See? There's a Central Market that's down the road in the other direction. You could do that. I can't afford Central Market. There's a Winco a little further up, kind of by Edmonds and Mount Lake Terrace, admittedly a few more miles up. Make a friggin' excuse and go buy a cup of coffee. I'm planning to go buy a cup of coffee up there Saturday. I'm going to make an excuse to go over to Shoreline to do it. Period. End of story. Grand opening they've announced is going to be October 17th. That will be the full-on grand opening that they're going to have. And so anyway, that's Black Coffee. The next thing I want to move on to is dear leader, golfer-in-chief, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. So it's really, really hard to kind of get the real story, the truthful information. And of course, we're in this place where like nobody knows what to believe when it comes to him and his COVID case. And this has been carefully curated because we have been gaslighted as a nation for 3.5 years, 3.75 years now. And so we don't know what to believe. This is what's kind of leaking out. And also, if you watch the video of him arriving back at the White House where he rips his mask off, and I have beaten COVID. Okay, thank you. he was having problems breathing. You're in denial. You don't have to be a hater to look at it. You could just see, good. If he didn't have all that orange makeup on, you would see he was probably ashen under all of that orange makeup that he had on there. The word is that he actually left AMA, against medical advice. That is the word. There was a drug regimen that he was on where he was supposed to get that last dose. It was only done in hospital, and it was supposed to be Monday night, which meant that the earliest he could have been released was Tuesday. So the word is he didn't get that last dose, and he left AMA. He also got this experimental cocktail from Regeneron. And there's been a lot of stories about how Donald Trump is connected to Regeneron. And we did some research on that. And with that, I'm going to roll the clip.
Lenny.
Thanks, Mr. President, for having us. I'm Len Schleifer, the founder and CEO of Regeneron, a company that I built with George McCloskeys over the last 30 years. And we are a monoclonal antibody primarily centered company. We are no strangers to collaborating with the administration. We work with Secretary Azar's group BARDA, and we came up with a cure for Ebola.
Say what?
And we came up with a cure for Ebola. And we're very proud of that. Dr. Fauci's group was really instrumental in testing that under unbelievable conditions in the Congo.
Well, the U.S. government on a bit of a spending spree this morning in support of vaccines and drugs against COVID-19, now just announcing $450 million in a contract for Regeneron to support the manufacturing and supply of its COVID-19 antibody drug. This is from both BARDA through Operation Warp Speed, that project focused on COVID-19, and through the Department of Defense.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us on, Meg. I'll tell you, Regeneron has been in the lead in trying to develop these so-called antibody cocktails to combat this terrible virus and make a dent in a big dent, we hope, into this pandemic. We've been exploiting technologies we've been developing for years. And despite all of our efforts and all of our technologies, which we're very optimistic about, we use them, for example, to treat Ebola. We've shown that they can attack this virus in monkeys, and now we're working to show that we can do this in people. But it isn't enough to be able to prove that this cocktail can do it. You have to be able to supply it. Supplying these things are extremely complicated. For probably 30 years, we've been admiring Genentech, part of the Roche group.
It sure is, Sarah. The first data we're seeing of Regeneron's antibody drug trials for COVID-19. And they are saying that the drug appeared to reduce the levels of the virus and help improve symptoms faster. Now, this is a look at initial results, about 275 patients who have COVID-19 but are not hospitalized, so not severe disease.
The antibody cocktail REGEN-COV2 is still experimental, but the company's CEO says it's shown promise in clinical trials. White House doctors requested and were given compassionate use authorization by the Food and Drug Administration to administer a dose to President Trump. The antibodies are manufactured in a laboratory and given by intravenous infusion.
These are shots.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Oh my goodness, there's so much to unpack there. So let's follow the crazy trade. So on March 7th, there is some White House pooled video. So what White House pooled video is essentially there's camera operators that would come in and they shoot when they were having these meetings. Now, remember March 7th, we as a country were still like, what's C disease? Unless you were here in the east side of Washington, and we were ground zero of C disease, and counting off by March 7, we were counting off deaths like that, and there was very, very palpable concern, and the rest of the country was kind of like, C disease, that's a China thing, whatever. So that's why everyone's packed in there and no masks, and so you have the president of Regeneron going, we cured Ebola, and I'm like, there was a cure for Ebola? Like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, there's a cure for Ebola? And I'm like, cure for Ebola? There's no cure for Ebola. CDC information is up there. Their drug is experimental. It is found to be somewhat effective in some cases for people that have Ebola if it is introduced earlier enough, but it is not considered a cure. It is considered a therapy. There is no cure if you get Ebola. That would, in a sane world, that would have been the end of Regeneron being in the orbit of the White House of any other administration, but not this one. No. So then what happens? We go to July and they get $450 million for Operation Warp Speed. That's $450 million of your dollars and my dollars. Not Donald Trump's dollars, because he only paid $750 in taxes. Yeah. Just putting it all out there on the table, malcontents. And then we fast forward to August, and they're doing this partnership with Roche because they don't have enough capacity to do it. And so, but they'll have the licensing rights of the United States, and Roche will have the licensing rights for the rest of the world. So, of course, what are they looking for this? Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And remember, who gave them the $450 million to get on that woo-woo money trade? You did, America. You did, suckers. And then we fast forward to the 29th of September, where they said we've done trials of 275 people and it's looking good. But remember, this is coming from the same company that said on camera to the president, we cured Ebola. So then really, how good is it? And then amazing of amazing, dear leader gets COVID the very next day after they announce it. And he gets this, and now it's a miracle. I thought you were supposed to do thoughts and prayers. Follow the money, suckers. Follow the money. That's all I can say about that at the end of the day. Because, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me 763.8 more times. No, it's the other way around. Shame on you, shame on. Wow, I just did a George Bush. He literally just did the whole, like there's a clip of him where he totally just mangled this thing, and I just did almost word for word, and it was not comedy. It was actually, that's the way it came out. With that, I'm just going to go to a commercial.
The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
That was the new version we wanted to show in the last show. That's why I say we're learning some things. All right. I don't even know if that actually was seen by the camera. We're next going to go to St. Louis, Missouri tonight, malcontents, where Mark and Pat McCloskey are now indicted felons. If you don't remember who Mark and Pat McCloskey is, let me provide you a refresher course.
Jasmine, this is Portland Place back here. It's clearly marked private, and that means more than just the stately homes. The streets and sidewalks are all private property, too. Protesters were en route to the mayor's house last night around 7:20. It's on another nearby street here. Police say those protesters ripped through the locked gate, which is now bent up and chained. The couple refuses to speak with Fox 2. Their attorney identifies them as Mark and Patricia McCloskeys. He says they are properly trained with the weapons you see them holding in these photos. Say what? He says they are properly trained with the weapons you see them holding in these photos.
Yeah, John, this has been a hot topic since June 28th when it occurred in the Central West End, and now the circuit attorney has charged both Patricia and Mark McCloskey with a felony.
This has gotten to be outrageous.
That's Mark McCloskeys' reaction to the charge filed by Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner. Gardner said it is illegal to wave weapons in a threatening manner at those participating in a non-violent protest. And while we are fortunate this situation did not escalate into deadly force, this type of conduct is unacceptable in St. Louis.
Good evening, America. We are Mark and Patty McCloskey.
These are chuds. Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
We're speaking to you tonight from St. Louis, Missouri, where just weeks ago you may have seen us defending our home as a mob of protesters descended on our neighborhood.
America is such a great country that not only do you have the right to own a gun and use it to defend yourself, but thousands of Americans will offer you free advice on how to use it. Chad. At least that's what we experienced. What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods.
So remember, guns don't kill people. Dangerous minorities do.
Out of St. Louis tonight, a grand jury has indicted a couple seen on video pointing guns at protesters outside their house over this summer. Mark and Patricia McCloskey have been indicted with 2 counts each for exhibiting guns at a protest and tampering with a weapon. The couple is expected to be in court in the next week.
Oh my goodness. Just like, I didn't watch the RNC. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And there was a ton of protest activity going on in Seattle at the time that we were filming and documenting. And I was actually dealing with some streamer burnout at that time. So I didn't watch because I just didn't want to punish myself. But so is that clip nuts or what?
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Chud. Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
I mean, it's just like, where do you unpack? There's so much to unpack. You know, we pointed the thing about the no trigger discipline. She has her finger, on the trigger as opposed to kind of, at ready. Neither of them have guns at low ready, which is part of the reason why they're looking at charges. Literally, if they had the guns pointed at low ready, we might not be having this conversation. We might still be disgusted at their actions, but we actually might not be having this conversation at all. The other thing is the way she's holding that gun. If she had actually pulled the trigger, anybody who's ever fired a handgun before knows it's just going to be embedded in her forehead. They know how to use the guns that they have. Well, they have been indicted now, which kind of then ties to Louisville, Kentucky. Because a lot of people don't seem to understand how the criminal justice system works in this country, including law and order, the law and order types.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Yeah, those types. They don't even understand how it works. Okay, police officer arrests you. Arrest just means that they have enough to kind of go, we want to hold you to figure out if a crime has gone on. Now, there are varying things. Of course, if they show up at a murder scene and a person there is covered in blood and they are holding the gun and the bullets match the body that's in there and the 5 holes that are in the body and the shell casings and all that, and they have the flash burns from pulling the trigger on the gun and the powder residue on their hands, then they have really, really strong case. And other times, like with Seattle protesters, what they do is they arrest people, they have no case, they file some charge on them, and then the prosecutors are forced to release them after 48 hours because they have no evidence to back up the charges, and then they hang those charges over the head of the protesters for the next 2 years. And in doing that, they are just trying to take protesters out of the game. So you're arrested. Then what happens is, if you're looking at a felony, then the district attorney has the decision to go, I'm going to charge. And then that goes before a grand jury, because that is, if it's a felony, because that is the constitutional process. And then the grand jury has the case presented to them by the district attorney or the district attorney's office. In most cases, it's an assistant district attorney, assistant prosecutor, and they present the case. And then the grand jury, the only decision the grand jury has to make is there enough, right? They don't have to do beyond reasonable doubt. All they have to come up with, did you guys make a case that there's a case? That's it. That's the bar. So if we follow the McCloskeys' journey here, what we have technically, although never cuffed. We have the arrest, right? The police ultimately did the charges. You have the prosecutor that did an indictment. Or I'm sorry, not the indictment. The prosecutors say I'm doing felony charges, and now they have been indicted. So now they are criminally charged. They will be in court in approximately a week. And then what will happen when they go to court is they're going to have to put in a plea. They will almost certainly, like practically every other defendant within the United States of America, even if they are guilty as hell, they will plead not guilty. And date will be set in discovery. And this will probably drag out for 2 years, and there'll probably be some plea deal at the end of the day. Because the case against them, the thing I'm interested in is they've both been charged with modifying a gun or modifying a weapon. I should have wrote that down on my note here on exactly what it is. And I'm really, really interested on, well, what do you mean? How did they modify a weapon? For instance, on that appears to be an AR-15 that they have. I couldn't tell you the manufacturer, but on that AR-15 that he has, did he make it fully automatic? Because of all the high profile and stuff with that, they're probably going to be tight-lipped on stuff like that. But what did they do to modify to the point that it's gotten a felony charge? And then again, if they modified it, say, to make an automatic weapon, as I understand it, that would be a federal charge, although the state of Missouri may have an equivalent charge for that anyway.
These are cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Lots of chud stuff. All right. For those of you who stuck around, now you get your dessert. And so what we're going to have next here is the bonus clip. And so this is from last night. And just like before, there's a fair amount of content here. And I'll explain it again. When pole cam is running, that pole is anywhere from 9 to 16 feet over my head. So last night, things were anywhere from about 9 to 12 feet. And so I don't see what you see. And there was a much more powerful example of that that we had from 10.3 that we did on 10.4 show. And so with that, I'm going to share you. And some of it is perspective. So in other words, here's what you saw, here's what I saw. And some of it is from clips and incidents that you haven't seen yet. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and roll that bonus clip. While that's going on, it's time to ask your questions. I've been reading your comments we've been going through, but if you got questions, now's the time to do them, and we can do a little AMA. So, Jonathan Price from Wolf City, Texas, and Jonathan Price was killed by Wolf City, Texas police. And an athlete, a motivational speaker. He was driving in his hometown, and he saw a woman and a man in a domestic violence dispute, and he went to protect the woman. Someone had called the police while that was going on. The police showed up and shot Jonathan Price dead. Shot him multiple times. All right, so well, bicycle officers are setting up. Police are announcing to move away from the officers. And the protesters are chanting, "Move back." Move back is a common chant from, there is a couple of officers here with riot helmets and batons. This is interesting. If you can kind of see, SPD is moving back very, very slowly.
And they do look like they are moving back. If you see the blinking red lights, that is their body cam. So the police body cams are on if you see the blinking red lights.
2, 3, 4, 5. They're taking 5 steps back. They just said, we're going to take 5 steps back and move around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the one guy 6.
Oh man, you gave me a heart attack.
Oh, sorry.
Dude, I was like, shit, I'm going down. Oh, totally thought you were a cop.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
I think I'm seeing what the strategy is here tonight. And I think it's a great protest strategy. They're basically picking about the steepest way back up Capitol Hill. Like, they went almost as low as you could go without going to the waterfront, and they are now taking literally the steepest route back. So far, a totally peaceful protest. If anything, because the Seattle police have run protesters really hard, this almost feels like a little bit of a payback march. Like, hey, we're gonna run you hard tonight. Jewish people have been protesting since the first book of the Old Testament. Or the Torah. Oh. Way back there. Blinking lights.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
I'm muted again. Same freaking clip, everything. I don't know, can you read that? Is it in focus? It's not in focus. I even have them there. Look, mute off. Right there with a question mark. Right in the camera. And I'm looking, and I just have to go. I thought, like, oh yeah. Mute's still on. Exact same place on the last show. We will work the kinks out. By the way, because of COVID, it's a one-man show. I can't like go, I blame you, Agent B. Agent B? Agent T? Agent Q? Agent D? Anybody? I blame Yoda the Wonder Pug. That's who I blame. He's actually asleep on the floor down there. He is. He's asleep here in the studio. What I was saying was that you didn't get to hear any of it again. What I was saying was the two women that were walking by, I was saying there's some things to unpack. The two women that were walking by going Black Lives Matter, they weren't part of the protest. They were just two people walking down the sidewalk. They were chanting in support as the protesters went by, and then they were chanting Black Lives Matter. They actually stopped while the police were at the bottom of the hill, and they were chanting Black Lives Matter at the police officers. The other thing that I was talking about was this really felt like a we're going to make you run tonight. The Seattle Police Department has adopted this tactic of running, the protesters 1, 2, 3 miles. And if anybody falls behind, they're essentially arrested. If somebody gets nailed with pepper spray and they can't see anymore, they're still expected to keep moving. And that's how they operate. And it really felt like that the goal last night was to make the police move. I've joked on the nights when they've run us really hard, meaning the police, where I'm like, hey, thank you for the cardio workout. I don't have to do gym. I don't have to do a jog tomorrow because I've checked it off my list tonight. This was another case of like, well, I checked it off the list. According to my Fitbit, 12,000 steps in 2 hours and 10 minutes, 43 flights of elevation change. So 12,000 steps for me is pushing, because I have a pretty wide stride, is actually pushing like almost 6 miles. So they moved really fast and really hard. Went from the edge of CHOP at SCC, the community college, to basically down at Stewart in the Orion Center. That took me all of 11 minutes, and I still wasn't able to catch up. And in part, if you go back to the stream, I'm actually moving as fast when I'm kind of walking as the police officers who are on bicycles are rolling downhill. And I'm basically keeping pace with them at several points. There's one thing I was really bummed about is when I was in the back, I had thought I had turned on the GoPro when I was in that initial kind of 11 minutes. And there's one point in my stream where I kind of go like, fuck. And you don't know what's going on. It's because I realized the GoPro did not turn on. Even I just didn't hold the button down long enough or push it hard enough. And the GoPro didn't go on. And I was bummed because I was like, it was going to be great video. And this is what happens live production. So that's the other thing. And with that, now we will go to your questions. And yeah, of course, I lost like half my audience because y'all couldn't hear again. Yeah, I know, both times. Oh, be nice. Don't play. Yoda is completely passed out in his bed. Yeah, well, because the Chud clips aren't muted. Again, there's a thing here for the mute button. I need like to get, I need a light that's there from there. I need to come up with some solution that I have a better marker, because really to see it, I have to turn and look. And my Post-it note was working so well tonight. What's happening is I'm catching up and I'm reading your comments, and then it just kind of rolls, and then I just start talking. All right, let's see here, because I'm now scrolling from the can't hear me, and I was seeing that there, oh my God, there's so many can't hear you comments, no sound. Give me a second. Give me a second. I'm trying to catch up. If they're charged, okay, so I know there were questions even before this. Raymond, I seem to remember you kind of asked like a similar question. I could be wrong. You know, do I think things, on coronavirus, or I think they get worse? Well, every model, everything that says is going to get a lot worse. The problem that we have is that we are transitioning from outdoor activity. Tomorrow is probably like our last nice fall day. One of the things I've talked about, this page started about the weather 4 years ago. This page did not start out about politics. It started out about the weather. I'm a weather junkie. I'm a weather nerd. If you're not familiar with Pacific Northwest weather, what happens here is sometime at the end of September or the end of October, somebody turns on the rain switch and that's it. And, you know, and that's it. It's kind of bye-bye long tail of summer or early fall. And guess what? Tomorrow's our last day because the model just screams fall. It's just kind of rain of some degree as far out as you can see. And the temperatures are going to drop. And October is the month that we have the fastest drop of temperature. Right now, our average temperatures are dropping about a degree every 2 days. So about a half a degree a day. So if you think 30 days, our average temperature will drop 15 degrees in the month of October. And we have had a very, very warm start to October. We're very spoiled right now. And I think all that is going to be coming to an end. What does that do? That means all in the northern states, everybody's going to be moving indoors. And we know that if you're outside, incidental COVID exposure isn't as dangerous as if you're inside. According to SAG-AFTRA SAFE-SETS, which is a program that I went through for my real job, you are 18 times more likely to get C disease than if you are inside versus outside. And so everyone's going to be going inside. Couple that then with the flu and the pneumonia, and then you've got, right, because we go into flu season and people get pneumonias, and this complicates things even further because you're going to have people who have C disease and they're going to be, it's the flu, right? I'll go to the grocery store and it's the flu. They're going to be in denial because people don't want to be like, wow, I may have a disease that actually can kill me. Flu, by the way, kills. Likewise, you may have people that are clogging up doctors and stuff because, you know, they've got to know, oh my God, I have C disease and I'm going to die, when really, you know, they don't, right? It's a cold or it's the flu. And so you're going to have all of that. Right now, the models are saying in the United States that we could be looking as much as 2,500 to 2,900 people dying a day in the United States as we get into December. And so I don't know ultimately if those numbers are going to be that bad, but it's definitely going to pick up and get worse. Because a vast chunk of the country is going to go inside. Now, what's interesting, I think in the southern states, X numbers may actually go a little bit down because they have what I call an August reverse winter. It is so hot down there, you go from air conditioning to air conditioning to air conditioning. I lived in Texas for 8 years in the Houston area, and that's what I called August reverse winter. And now you're kind of moving into the time of the years there where you could spend a lot more time outside, and maybe you're not running air conditioning as much. You know, they're still running probably at this point more for humidity than because it's just so searing hot. And that is going to actually help go down. We know that an indoor setting, unless you're really stupid, like you are celebrating Judge Barrett at a COVID fest, which is now turned into this super spreader event. Are we up to 30? I think we're up to like, it's a ridiculous number now. It's like 30 or 34 people, like as you start following the tree. And Steve, this guy is like crazy evil, Steve Miller. He's evil. He doesn't get a chud button. He's evil. And he has it. How did it come with the name Malcontentment Tango? Wow, I haven't been asked this question in a really long time. It is a pun, a spoof, a wink to a couple of different snarky things. I'm a huge Rick and Morty fan. I think Rick and Morty is one of the most brilliantly written programs on television. Rick Sanchez, to me, in his just nihilistic way, but he's such a broken character, right? He's severely depressed. He's alcoholic, filled with self-loathing. And despite all of that, he has a daughter, despite all of his failings, that still adores him. And he is the smartest man in the known universe. And so there's an episode with the Council of Ricks, and they say to Rick, it was always you. You were the malcontent. And I was like, ooh, malcontentment. The next thing is the comedian artist Tom Lehrer. Tom Lehrer is from the 1960s, and he actually did graduate from Harvard. And part of what he did to pay his way through school, because once upon a time you could work your way through Harvard. You can't do that anymore, but he was working his way through Harvard. I believe he's a physicist or mathematician, but he would do comedy, and he wrote all of these songs. And probably the most famous song that people probably know, I know that some kids were taught it, and that's a song about the elements. And I couldn't sit here and sing it, but it's just a song that puts all of the elements in the periodic table of elements into kind of this mnemonic, this rhyme, so that you could, if you memorize the words, then you can remember all of there's thulium and thallium. So most people know that. He had a song that was called the Masochism Tango. And I do remember a little bit of that one, which is, take your cigarette from your holder, burn your initials in my shoulder, say you'll be mine till the end of time as we dance to the Malcontentment Tango. As we dance to the Masochism Tango. And so that's where it comes from. It comes from a little wink and a nod to Rick and Morty, and then it comes from Tom Lehrer and the Masochism Tango song. Well, but you see, that's a great question. Why are things thinning out? There were, again, SPD said 60 people for ENDD, and then, I put it at like 75, so you could split hairs between those two numbers. On Saturday, SPD estimated 300 people at ENDD. For Breonna Taylor, which was the 23rd, estimated 400 to 500 people at Westlake, and an additional 400 to 500 people up at Cal Anderson. I actually don't see the numbers are thinning out. I see the numbers are going in the other direction. For people who say have been protesting, and actively protesting, Saturday was a workout, and Monday was a workout, and they get burned out. The other thing is, like, there's this whole, get a job, you don't have a job. You know what? Most protesters have jobs. Surprise, surprise. George Soros is not paying the protesters. George, if you're listening, dude, Jewish brother, like, dude, you owe me money for 20 years. Because what I understand, you're the largest employer in the United States, and you pay the best. But I certainly haven't seen one penny of it. I'm allowed to crack jokes about George Soros because I'm Jewish. And I'm really serious about that, because that's a trope. It's an anti-Semitic trope. And I'm using my Jew card on that one. And we don't tolerate the whole, paid by George Soros. But a lot of them have jobs. And so, and some of them got families. And so that's why you see kind of these numbers go up and down, up and down. And then the different thing is too, is there's different protesters that have different taxes. Morning March is still going. Morning March doesn't necessarily get a lot. They're streamed and all, but I don't think people are aware of everything that goes on with Morning March, because they start at 8 in the morning, and there's people that are dealing with kids and school and work and life, and they don't necessarily see the stuff that's going on. They start with yoga, and I always tell people, it's like, look, if you just like, I don't want to maybe get tear gassed or something. What if it all goes sideways? Go to Morning March. Go to a Morning March. And Morning March only is Monday through Friday. EDM seems to, the Everyday March, which I think is because their leadership is so, like, a lot of people know their leadership. TK is still recovering. They're on a crutch. They've got a leg injury. They had a closed head injury. She had a closed injury. I'm just not saying they to be gender neutral. Had a closed head injury that was given to him by the Seattle Police Department, and she's working through that. Toddy had a terrible time in the King County Jail, and she poured out her soul, poured out her friggin' soul at the Breonna Taylor. I just like, oh my God, I just want to what can I do so you can feel protected? And it's tough. And so it kind of feels there's a little bit of step back there. But I don't think that, Yeah, we don't have 60,000 people going in the streets, but I think things are kind of at a stasis point. I know it's a long-ass answer to your question there. Is that what they said? It was Antifa leg day? Is that what was it? Because, again, I just knew, but I didn't see it really was Antifa leg day, I'll tell you that. All right, let's go through all of these. No sound. Hey, turn on the sound. All right, I scrolled through all that. And I did. I repeated everything. Welcome back. We can hear you now. But let's see. Choice. I don't think that would go very well. All right, I answered the malcontentment tango question. Suppose there is a question. Something about coronavirus. Wow, Shell, that's a great question. Shell's question basically is there a list of, is there a resource, a list of terms that people maybe don't realize are racist or shouldn't be used anymore? Like, for example, on a stream that I did on Saturday, I used the term paddy wagon, and I stood up here on the show on Sunday and I apologized for using that term. And there were people that were commenting, it's like, wait a minute, paddy wagon is bad. Yeah, paddy wagon is now considered bad because it's considered basically a slur, a slight to Irish Americans, because the whole thing with paddy, it's it goes into this whole thing of Irish are just drunks and they get into fights all the time, and so we're gonna get the paddy wagon and throw all these drunk Irish people in there, and it's a term that was used in Boston and New York, and I stood up in front of the camera and said, I'm not going to make any excuses. It's a bad term. You shouldn't use it. I used it, and I'm sorry. Now, with that said, this is the age of the internet. I'm sure somewhere in the University of Google, there is somewhere where you have, a list of terms that you should or shouldn't use. But I would say you have to be careful, because you don't want to get into this like, well, I'm more woke than you. If honestly, like if I heard somebody use the term paddy wagon here in Seattle, I just might kind of cringe a little bit inside, but I may not say anything. Now, if I heard somebody use the term paddy wagon and we're at Paddy Coyne's Irish restaurant, then I might kind of go like, hey. Now, of course, if they're Irish, it kind of goes like to the Jewish thing. And see, this is all these complexities, right? I never use the N-word because I can. I'm a pasty white boy, but I'll crack Jewish jokes all day long because I'm a Jew and I can own my Judaism, and I'm going to own that Judaism, and so I think you get into this, you can get into this real slippery slope of I'm more woke than you, and when reality, and that's not directed to the person asking the question, but then in reality, you're really not woke at all. You're just being, I don't know what I would call you. You're not being a chud, but you're being something else. I have no idea. I don't know. My first reaction is, what? I wish I need Stewie on a button. What? I should have that because that would be my reaction to that. But then I would have to dig into it. There's some things that, the other thing is you have to be careful. There's a couple of things that have been kind of passed around that I've seen maybe in the last 2 years where it's like, that's racist, you shouldn't use it. And it's kind of written this, and it's just a troll. It's like it's fake news. It really isn't. It's just out there trolling people. And I am not the great arbiter on this. I am not. I am on a path to learning like everybody else. The biggest liberating thing, there's kind of three things. The number one thing was the Seattle Police Department opened up my eyes on June 6th. Had I not seen and experienced everything I experienced on June 6th, if I had stayed home that day, not gone out with a camera, not witnessed everything I witnessed and experienced everything I witnessed, I might still be sitting in my office talking about the weather and doing that kind of stuff. So that was number one. My eyes got opened up to like, whoa, what the hell is going on? That's number one. The second thing was me letting go of kind of like the edge, letting go of the edge and just letting go, okay, and admitting I'm racist. That was number two. and then starting to work on that and addressing that. And then the number 3 was making this conscious decision of, I am going to take an active role in this. And what can I do to take an active role in this? I'm going to use my talents as a storyteller and a videographer and a cinematographer, and I'm going to use those talents to tell this story. And that's it. And candidly, people who have, say, watched the tango grow up over the last 4 years, my videos I did like 4 years ago are so awkward because I hate being on this. I really do. I hate being on this side of the camera. I would so much rather be on the other side of the camera. And it has taken a ton of work. And I still am not really good at looking to the lens, make sure the mute's off. That's a different issue. Same place too. Same flipping place. But anyway, those are the 3 things. If all this ends, you go back to weather or stick to the media. No, there's so much news in the world, and this isn't going to end. This is a generational issue. Look, at some point, the protests are going to end, or one of the things that seems to have settled down, like I've been saying, we're in sectarian violence. We're in sectarian violence. We are in a state of sectarian violence in this country. Full stop. It does seem like it's pulled back in the last few weeks. We are not seeing kind of these big erupting running street battles. And the other thing that we saw, of course, was this big event, this Portland on 9/26 that turned into a non-event because I need the button.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
They didn't show up, right? There was like 500-ish there, and by all reports, maybe 200 of them were streamers, national media, and international media waiting for the Second Civil War in the United States to start. And there are some things that I haven't talked about that happened on that day, on the night of 9/25, in the morning of 9/26 before streaming. It'll probably be one of those things I may not talk about for a long time, or one day I could write a book. If I ever write a book, it will be in the book. And the mods and admins know what I am talking about. And we seem like we've backed away from that cliff a little bit. But no matter what the election outcome is going to be, you're going to have a lot of unhappy people. Right now, the data is really kind of pointing that one group is going to be pretty unhappy here in exactly another 28 days. And of course, that's barring some huge surprise that we don't see. But this doesn't go away. We haven't really fixed much of anything in this country. And if you get Biden in the White House, does it fundamentally change things? Well, we'll still have a democracy if we get Biden in the White House. And women may still actually have access to abortion, and we may keep ACA. You won't have 20 million people kicked off of their medical insurance lifeline in the middle of a pandemic, and you won't have 100 million people or possibly more who have pre-existing conditions that will then become trapped to the insurance plans that they are attached to. We may not have kids in concentration camps anymore. These are some pretty basic things. And oh yes, by the way, we hopefully would not have a mad dictator with children as young as 14 right now to kind of continue this lineage of being a mad dictator and just going down into some awful place that we don't want to go. These are all the benefits we get Joe Biden. But if we get Joe Biden, like, is the police, he's flat out said, I'm not for defunding police. And I'm like, I know that. But you know what? I'm for supporting people who have the right to gay marriage, to continue to have the right to gay marriage. I am for supporting transgender people who want to serve this country and be in the military, if that's what they want to do. If they have that pride and if they have that patriotism, then who's to say that they shouldn't do that? Because right now we're in a state where they're saying, you can't do that. The last I checked, my flesh is just as good as stopping a bullet as somebody who is transgender. Well, not as much anymore with the eyes. I'm not as good as firing a gun, but when I was younger and the eyes were better, I'm just as good as firing a gun as the next person. So why shouldn't that person be able to serve? Why shouldn't a woman have rights to make the reproductive choices to their body? It's their frickin' body. And who's making those decisions? A bunch of old white dudes. These are the things. but it's still not going to fundamentally fix everything that's flawed in this country. And so this will continue. I do think you reach a point where the protests are either going to are going to dwindle out and stop. There will still be protests, but it won't be a daily thing. Or as we move to 4 weeks from now, do we kind of move into more intense sectarian violence or worse? I will tell you this right now, my calendar, November 3rd, November 4, is clear. And right now, like, I'm kind of, in my head, I'm kind of like, might be an all-nighter on November 3rd, and I just might be rolling through November 4, and it just might be stream, and maybe I'm running for my life on that, and then get a little sleep, and then we'll see where it goes. And it could all be very, very chill. We'll just have to see. Alice, well, that's exactly it. Alice, I appreciate it. I would say not everybody is thankful for streamers showing the truth. There is so much that happens behind the curtain that people don't see, right? They see the actual streaming. There is negotiation that goes on with the protesters, not to find out their plans, but what are the rules of engagement, and what do they want us to stream, what do they don't want us to stream, and then trying to explain to them that basically, like, look, if you're going to put all these massive amounts of restrictions on us, you're no better than what we're fighting, right? We're out here trying to protect your right to the First Amendment, but need to know that you have my back and you're protecting my right to the First Amendment. And then the other thing is like, if we only film selected incidents, then you're going to hate us as much as you hate the mainstream media, because what does the mainstream media do? Well, they only film selected incidents. They don't select the before, during, and after. Last night is a great example of this. Last night was so important to film because here you have ENDD, this is the Direct Action Group, and this is the group that everybody associates with, they're rioters. And what did they do? They went for a 2-hour and 10-minute borderline jog, nonstop jog through Seattle last night, and we showed that. And the funny thing, there were people commenting at the end, it was like, it's not real. They did something. I know they did. There's literally comments that were in there, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They pushed some trash dumpsters in the road. I found a couch. I was mystified by this couch because this was like something from my younger days. It was like, there's a time I would have looked at that couch and like, that's a cool couch. And now I just look at it, I'm like, holy shit, that's just one butt ugly couch. By the way, that corduroyish material that would survive a nuclear war that's on there. There's part of me that would want to put a woods lamp on that couch, and then there's another part of me it's like, I wouldn't know. But that was one thought when I was looking at it. It was like, woods lamp would be just amazing and horrifying. A couple of more questions, and I think we're going to call it a show. I think that's synchronicity, Joyce. I'm reading your comment there about October and October 2, and I get it. You noticed because it's your birthday. I think that's just kind of synchronicity. I mean, what happened to that reporter in the United States' response to that is just beyond horrific. And I'll remind you, dear listeners, the United States is on the list now of one of the most dangerous countries in the world for press and media, because so many people in the press and media have been attacked and shot and killed. And I know that's like really hard to believe, but go ahead and do a search on the internet. It is now considered one of the most dangerous countries in the world to be a member of the press. Hiram has balls. Like, I'm like looking for a prop. This does not illustrate how big Hiram's balls are. And I we had it on we were doing a watch party when he was assaulted by a group. And again, this whole thing about, we don't want you filming these parts and stuff. It was all totally bizarre because there was really nothing going on, and it was a peaceful protest and nobody was in block. And I just like, I was lost. I didn't get it. He really stands his ground on this whole principle of, hey, this is my First Amendment rights, and I worry about him. But I do think he's a great streamer. I do think that he operates with an incredible high level of integrity, and I know that other streamers think very, very highly of him. He is not obsessed with likes or follows or making people happy or, oh, people adore me. He is obsessed with telling and showing the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the before, the during, and the after. And he does it courageously, and it's a shame. Any protest movement needs to have a strong media arm. If you don't have a strong media arm, you don't control the narrative, and then other people control the narrative. We were talking about this last night, right? Here you have the ENDD march, 2 hours and 10 minutes of peaceful protest. Again, I keep saying it, right? Like this, it's cardio night in Seattle. What if nobody streamed it? What if, right, they pushed all the streamers out? Then who's going to control the narrative? Well, the Seattle police are going to control the narrative. Do the police have a history of lying and controlling the narrative? We absolutely know they do. Let's go back to June 6th. They threw IEDs at us. Here's the picture. You can go up to the Seattle Police Department's Twitter because, incredibly, they have never taken the tweet down. Here are improvised explosive devices that protesters threw at us on June 6th. They're candles. And then those candles, they're not hollowed out, you dumbasses, you chuds, you
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
They weren't hollow because you could see the whole thing. They're not the labels that say candles are still on the candles in the picture that they put there. I mean, I guess if you really grasp at straws, a candle is an improvised explosive device. I mean, you light it and it has a little flame on there. So then who would control the narrative without the streamers? And then basically they could have been blamed for anything, right? If there was, say, some other, I'm playing what ifism. Something not even related, the protesters were 2 blocks away, building catches on fire. Then if the streamers aren't there documenting everything that's going on, what prevents the city, what prevents the feds, what prevents the police from then going, the protesters set the building on fire? Not much. The other thing is in Seattle, I'm getting a little ranty here, and this isn't like directed or whatever. There's traffic cams everywhere, and the traffic cams, and this has been exposed, there's some feeds on Twitter about this, the traffic cams are being used illegally. The police are working, coordinating with the DOT to zoom in into those traffic cams to get people's faces, and they are not supposed to be used that. They are not supposed to be used to get people's faces. They're not supposed to get used for license plates, but the feeds are public, and so you could see what they're watching. And so people who watch these cameras have noticed the cameras are zooming in on people's faces and license plates. And so who's there to stop them? So the bottom line is, if you're a protester, you're in a sensitive job, or like you're worried about, or then you should be in block. And this goes back, how do you don't show protesters' faces? 75% of it is because of doxers, right-wing chuds, and people that'll be out if they identify someone to try to get them fired from their jobs. When I got doxed by Mike Solon, there were people, oh my God. This gets the chud button.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
These are chud.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
There were people sending emails to the company that I run, that I'm an officer at, saying like, we don't know, but you have this guy and he works at your, and he's Antifa. We had an idea like of what to do under reply people, and it was just like, no, it's fine. We were going to do something. Basically what we were thinking about was we were going to write, it wouldn't come from me, it would come from someone else, like, thank you very much, and we're really happy that you brought this to our attention. We weren't aware of this. in this activity. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make a donation to the LDF National American Advancement of Colored People LDF Fund in your name of $100. So if you could go ahead and share with us that this is your name, so we can give you the proper tax credit, we would really appreciate that. The concern that we had is we also make it flooded with a bunch of chuds that were, because we would make the donations, and that was kind of one of the concerns. It's like, well, we'll stick it back to you, and then all of a sudden we would bankrupt ourselves from committing to those donations. So anyway, yeah, it happens. They try to get people. It's hard to get a business owner fired from the business they own. Chuds. I watched it today. What are your thoughts on defund? Okay, Pam, that's a great question. That'd be the thing that I'm going to close off on. I've said many, many times, I don't like the term. I don't like the term defund police. I don't like it because that's the marketing person in me, right? People hear defund and they start clutching their pearls. Oh, Lordy Lord, what are we going to do? Save me, Donald Trump. They want to defund. I prefer to use the term demilitarize or unburden. I've had some people say they don't like the term unburden because then it implies that the non-criminal calls, the homeless, the drug addicted, the mentally ill are a burden, and it's not that. If you talk to most law enforcement officers, they will flat out tell you they don't want to deal with the mentally ill. They don't want to deal with being a homeless advocate. They don't want to be social workers. They don't want to be marriage counselors. They don't want to be drug counselors. They don't want to be alcohol counselors. They don't want to do any of that stuff. They don't like doing it, and they're set up for failure. I've said this so many times. If you're showing up to a person that's having a mental health crisis and you're wearing body armor and you have a radio squawking away and you have a gun and a baton and a taser and pepper spray, you've triggered that person who's having a mental health or alcohol or drug crisis by your mere presence. They're absolutely triggered. You are already set up for failure. And there are programs that are on the east side, east of Seattle, where they have co-responding mental health officers. And the co-responding mental health officer goes in and provides and renders assistance. And they are backed up by an armed officer on some calls. So for instance, if they're going to a domestic violence call, they don't go there by themselves because domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls that an officer can go on. But if they're just kind of going like, there's some homeless person sitting crying on the sidewalk because this happens and I am worried and I'm concerned, and a good meaning person called 911, don't call 911. That's how you get people killed. He woke up, and I can't have him wandering around the studio. America, say hi to Yoda the Wonder Pug. Yoda the Wonder Pug, almost 17 years old. He's almost 17. Yoda, say hi to America. I can't have him wander around the studio because he's mostly blind, and there'll be like light towers falling and things getting unplugged. That's right, sneeze all over the equipment there. So anyway, I'm not an abolitionist. I am a defunder, I guess you could say that. And I'm for putting that money in the communities, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody has their views and how they want to do in the protest. However, my view on defunding goes further than just straight defunding. It's like we need absolute, this is why I was saying earlier, the system works perfectly and that the system is completely inherently racist and inherently biased. And we have to fix that and address that. How you doing there, Bubba? Is Yoda the Wonder Pug. Yes, that's exactly the point, and that's why in the earlier question, well, like, was all this end? Do I just go back to doing weather and media? And this isn't going to end. I see this as this is the long haul. Now, what will stop me? This is the thing that I'm wrestling with. This takes a ton of time. I've said many, many times, I don't want to profit off of Black misery. I don't want to profit off of the BIPOC community. But as we're getting bigger and we're getting more attention and we're dealing with bigger and bigger issues that are created as you get bigger, like tomorrow, I probably spend 2 to 4 hours doing DMCA takedowns. Essentially playing lawyer. And a couple of those, I may have to go to a lawyer and spend some money, and there's probably a couple of people that are going to get letters in the mail, because there's some people that are just habitually using our stuff, and they're doing it without attribution of credit, or they're, to the point that, they're hiding the logos and stuff, and you're stealing IP. We used everything courtesy and provided accreditation to everything that we use tonight. And there's a couple of sources we use that I have direct permission to use their content. A couple of sources, not all the sources that we use. But I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to profit off of other people's content as people do. Andy No is a great example of this. Like Andy No was using our content from May 16 on the SPAGA march that was declared a riot and was literally monetizing that content. I mean, that's just... You want to do a Yoda?
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
Chud. It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Yeah. Anyway. So that's just like one example of things that take time. Pulling all this show together takes time. And so there's a growing time and money equation. And I'm kind of hitting the wall on that. And so that's some things I have to soul search. And there's people that said, oh, you should do t-shirts and stuff you want. And again, it's just like t-shirts would be cool. Merchandise would be cool. It really would be cool. But then I'm kind of like, but it feels a little icky. So there's some decisions that I have to do. Personally, I would love to do one of these shows 7 days a week. I would love to do it. But then that would be my full-time job. And I have these addictions: food, clothing, and shelter. Doing this for free as a full-time job does not support those addictions of food, clothing, and shelter. And I know there's some people that says, well, that's just you clinging to your white privilege. I mean, eventually, I don't have a studio. I don't have power. I don't even have the equipment. And then I can't do this anymore. And then that just doesn't benefit anybody except the chuds. So I know it's like a long ass answer to the question. You really didn't get an answer, but there's some things I have to figure out. And then there's some things, frankly, that I've tried to do that it just wasn't well received and it's kind of, bit me in the rear end. There's some things that I've tried to do that was in good faith and wanting to support the BIPOC community, and it wasn't received. And I get why it wasn't received well. And, that's a learning curve for me. So, oh, he's a total chud. Oh, he's a total senior citizen dog. He is almost 17, and he is a total handful. It's funny. He's like, what are you looking at? I see you touching something down there, but I don't smell food. But it's very interesting to you, human. Again, the reason I'm holding a pug, he was asleep on the floor of the studio. He literally woke up at the end of the show here. And if I just started letting him wander around, because he is mostly blind, between all like the light towers and everything else that's in here, it would just be a disaster. It would. And the other thing is, quite frankly, he may panic because he's blind. And then if he were to panic, he would have an accident, and that would just add to the disasters. But this is my fuzzy buddy. You are my fuzzy buddy, aren't you? Oh my God, I love pug snuggles. See, this is why I love puppers. Donald Trump doesn't like, there's something wrong with someone that doesn't like dogs. There's something really wrong. Unless it's a cultural issue, that's different. But not cultural issue with him. Yeah, he doesn't like dogs. No, he doesn't. All right. I think that's it. I think we've kind of covered everything here that we're going to cover. And so with that, malcontents, we're going to roll just two more little pieces. Thank you for watching. We will really, really try to do this 2 to 3 days a week. The reality is it does take about 6 to 8 hours of work to put together one of these. And this is still off the cuff. There's no teleprompter. I would love to do these on a teleprompter, and writing a script would honestly probably add about another 4 hours of work. That's what I mean. It would, like to really do this right would be a full-time job. And I would need like 2 or 3 people here in the studio, which just opens up a whole can of worms. But I think we're doing pretty good, for just, and You're not a journalist. Yeah, all right. You do all this and walk around with 30, 50 pounds of equipment and stuff. That's it. Gonna roll 2 pieces for you. Malcontent out.
The Malcontentment Tango is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live as they happen. To defend the First Amendment, using our rights of a free press and to petition the government for redress of grievances, and to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support us is to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, and Instagram. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.